Hey, I'm here with William Padilla Brown. Y'all know him, seen him in my
That's
videos before, Symbiotics. You came all the way out here from LA,
Angeles.
right?
Yep,
okay,
yep.
and you're going to be giving a talk about truffles tonight, yeah?
Yes, I'm talking about truffles, the Earth's ultimate mushrooms. You know what I'm saying? It's about to be a packed house. You know what I mean? It's going to be crazy. You want to learn why I think truffles are the Earth's ultimate mushrooms? Did you know truffles are mushrooms? You know what I'm saying? Everybody's looking at them as food. Nobody's looking at them as medicine. And we're finding new species every year. Check me out.
Awesome.
I think that truffles may be the most potent medicinal mushrooms that are undervalued as medicinal mushrooms and overrated as a food. When we're talking about chemical complexity, I mean, we're in the land of Stamets, we're in the land of Irricon. And Stamets said, and early in my career I listened to a video of Stamets say, the mushroom lives on a tree for so many years without being decomposed by all of these organisms and all this competition that's trying to decompose it. It has unique compounds, antivirals, antimicrobial compounds that it's producing to be able to live up there for all this time. Well, I'm thinking about this truffle that's in one of the most diverse ecosystems, the soil, that's growing for months without being destroyed, without being eaten, but then when it's ready to be eaten, then it gets eaten. There's a lot of chemical complexity that's going on in these mushrooms, and there's little to no research on them as medicinals, only research on them as how do we cultivate these things, and only for a couple European species. So there's a lot of work to do, which is really exciting for me. So yeah, I was really young when I got into truffles. I was out here trying to make statements, you know what I'm saying? I was out here trying to introduce mycology to contemporary culture. I'm still trying to do that. You know, I can have these conversations all I want, but most of us are already saved in the sense that we're in the forest, we're touching the land, we know about mushrooms, we know that truffles are mushrooms. Everybody in here knows truffles are mushrooms. 99%, 99.9, I would say 100% of the world does not know this. Most people don't know anything like this. Most people aren't connected to the soil. So I'm trying to relate a lot of this information into contemporary media in a way that's digestible to the modern person that is living in cities and dealing with all sorts of ailments because they don't touch soil or mushrooms and things like this. But yeah, cordyceps and truffles. And I also was like, I need to let the world know that I was this young when I figured this shit out. Like, I'm just gonna keep it real. This is my resume. I dropped out of high school. My resume is what I put on the internet when I put it on the internet. I was doing this at this time. You can go check the dates, you know what I'm saying? But I started selling truffles. I started selling truffles in the winter time because I had a farm going. I'm growing cordyceps. I'm growing all these different mushrooms. And I'll be foraging a lot of mushrooms, selling hundreds of pounds of foraged mushrooms in the fall. I started, as soon as the mushrooms stopped in the fall, I needed some way to supplement my income, and that's when the more valuable truffles become in season, traditionally. Now you can get truffles all year. My business is based in Pennsylvania. I live for the most part in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the mushroom capital of the US for production. So when I go to Eastern Pennsylvania, anything you need in the mycological realm is available. So it didn't take that long for me to plug into some companies out there that were importing truffles. The first company I found that was importing truffles had barrels, like those big 33-gallon steel drums filled with frozen truffles. I didn't want nothing to do with that. That was kind of weird. Those would be good, maybe for extraction, something like this. But then I found the fresh truffles, so I started selling those, and they were able to supplement my income whenever the wild mushrooms weren't around. So that's really when I got into it. I was like 22, 23 years old. And I was inspired by this guy, he was featured in my documentary, Ian Perkayesta. He runs Regalis, which is one of the more prominent exotic food distributors in our country. And he started this company when he was 15 years old in his parents' garage. He moved to New York City right out of high school and started distributing truffles for an Italian multimillionaire family from, I can't remember exactly where from. But yeah, he was just a really remarkable person for me to see, especially as a young person, to see another person of color outside selling these really expensive things. I'm just like, wow, this is really cool, because I was already interested in mushrooms. I'm trying to figure out how to make a living doing this. And I'm like, whoa, he's driving around New York City in his own van, has his own company, selling all these, not only truffles, but all like chanterelles, exotic wild foraged mushrooms to all these Michelin star chefs. I was like, that looks awesome. That looks super cool. I was like, 2014, I don't know, that was 11 years ago. I was 19. Like, I was very impressionable. So, I love cordyceps. I love truffles. Did anybody know that there's cordyceps? There's truffles that grows, or cordyceps type mushrooms that grows off of truffles? Pretty crazy. So these are in the Hypocreales order, I believe. I think Hypocreales is an order, not a family. Anybody want to correct me? Okay, so these are in the Hypocreales order in relation to cordyceps that grows on bugs. But these parasitize what people call false truffles. I think that's just a funny thing. I think false truffles is like saying Africanized bees. Like, it's just like a weird concept. They're a truffle. It's just, they call them false truffles because people don't want to eat them. They're not ones that are gourmet, but it's still a truffle. These truffles are generally in the Elaphomyces genus, and they are more like puffballs. These truffles will turn black with spores in the inside, and you don't want to eat them. If you find a puffball and it's white in the inside, that's cool. If it's spores in the inside, you don't want it. Same with these. And my buddy Charlie in Virginia has actually experimented extensively with eating the peridium. So with truffles, there's an outer skin called the peridium, and then the inside is generally where the spores are produced, called the gleba. So he was eating the peridium and saying it was very stimulating, but he would literally just be munching on the outside of these little truffles, which are the easiest to find in the Northeast because squirrels dig them up, and if you dig in any hole, you're likely to find one of these truffles. And these cordyceps are abundant, so you can just find a bunch of these truffles in general areas in hemlock forests. I'll talk a little bit more about squirrel holes, but that's one of the ways you can find truffles if you're just looking to discover truffles. So yeah, what are truffles? Truffles are ectomycorrhizal hypogeous fungi. So has anybody heard this term before, hypogeous? Okay, so we generally deal with epigeous mushrooms. So we don't ever really talk about it because we never really deal with hypogeous mushrooms. So epigeous, anybody want to have a guess what that means? Epigeous, hypogeous? Above ground, epigeous, hypogeous is below ground. So hypogeous mushrooms are mushrooms that grow below ground. And there's a term in evolutionary biology in the ocean called carcination, where there's multiple species that turns into a crab shape because it's a desirable shape in the ocean. In mushrooms, there's a term called secodioid, where mushrooms start to close their cap up. And this is what I believe is I tell people when you're looking at nature, it's important that you remove your lifespan bias, because if you go into the environment and say, I was born in 1990, I'm probably going to live 80 years, this is the time frame of my life, then everything is like a pause screen. All of these organisms are in a process of millions of years of evolution. They're changing into something right in front of our eyes, but we're seeing them in a static moment in the sake of nature time. But a lot of mushrooms are literally trying to go underground. They're like, oh shit, it's hot up here, it gets dry up here, the wind is blowing around, my gills are fragile, I want to protect myself. There's grass now, I want to go down under there. Some mushrooms evolved before there was grassy plants and stuff like this. I mean, they've had hundreds of millions of years with all these different plants, but they're I want to get more protected. So there's a lot of different lines of mushrooms that have become truffles. Some of the more desirable truffles are Morchellaceae. They're Morchella, they're Morel relatives. There's Amanita truffles. At Telluride last year, my friend Graham showed me a lactifluche truffle that would bleed latex when you cut it. So there's different lines of truffles, all these different mushrooms. Amanita truffles, all different kinds. Stinkhorns are actually truffles that turn back into an above ground mushroom, and they still use an aromatic attractant for spore dispersal. Very interesting. They still come out of a ball. So, as mycorrhiza, I think it's important to share, especially as we're getting into farming, that mycorrhiza represent incredible carbon storage solutions. They're actively one of our biggest carbon banks, is when you're dealing with truffles, with mycorrhizal trees, generally the tree is not making any contact with the soil. The entirety of its roots are covered in fungus that's making all of the interactions between the soil and the tree. So that's a lot of weight, that's a lot of material, of mycelial mass that in wild truffiers, a truffier is a tree that's producing truffles or a grove of truffle production. In wild truffiers, there's trees that are over 100 years old that have maintained a mycelial relationship. This is something that farmers haven't figured out how to really get past like a 50-year mark, except for one guy, I'm not allowed to mention his name, I'll talk a little bit more about him. But one guy I met in Spain that was able to have trees that are getting past that age of 50. I mean, a lot of us know about mycorrhizae. I don't really need to get into this, but I really like to emphasize that this can be an incredible carbon storage solution, and maybe there may be some funding in approaching it in that direction. So they used to be apigeous, as I mentioned. The most recent relative to truffles is this fungus, this cut fungus, Nothojapnia baxterii, and it's a South American fungus. So I'm going to start proposing a theory to you guys, and then I'm going to get back into just nerding out all about truffles. It's all nerding out about truffles, but I'm going to propose a theory to you guys. So some of these things are important. I've been like mad in my lab, putting a bunch of post-it notes on the whiteboard and tying all the strings together. I'm like, oh man, I'm reading this research over here, and it correlates with this research over here, and I don't think anybody put this together. So I'm going to put a couple things together. So Tuberaceae diverged about 156 million years ago. This is a molecular estimate with fungi. This is what we got to do. They don't leave the best fossils to record from. So we see this selection for reduced water loss, but we also see this selection inhibit the ability for spore dispersal. So this is where we see the animal attracted. Truffles inherently are incredibly symbiotic. I would consider any truffle a keystone species. They're holding up multiple relationships. Multiple animals have to eat them, and they have to have association with a tree. This is one of the reasons why I want to get people to care about truffles, because I already say mushrooms are the hooked on phonics of ecological literacy. Does anybody know what hooked on phonics is? I say this and a lot of people don't know. My mom made me do this little thing when I was little to help me learn about how to read. It helps you learn how to read. I say mushrooms are the hooked on phonics of ecological literacy because mushrooms get people passionate and out in the woods to go find them. And then you have to learn about trees. You have to learn about ecosystems. And a lot of times people don't know that they're learning all this other stuff, and then they're just like, wait, I know how to identify an oak tree now because I wanted to find a maitake mushroom. So it's like all these little nuances. I think truffles are like so good at this because if you fall in love with truffles, you immediately have to care about other things. If you fall in love with a native truffle, all right, well we got to protect these trees and we need these animals now. It's not just one thing, and I really like that. So this animal, these animal connections. This is 2021 research. Patagonian birds eating truffles. I think the more that because this is still new, we're going to find all of these different animals. Another 2024, September 2024, latest. What is this? Ndoki forest. Lowland gorillas foraging false truffles. They eat the whole thing. But they're eating the truffles that we don't value as humans as delicious. So this is a really incredible research paper. A lot of observations, a lot of photos of these gorillas eating these truffles. We have squirrels. We have specifically flying squirrels. If there's flying squirrels, that's a very high indication. They're more reliant on truffles than most other species. So there's some species that like smaller, particularly voles and flying squirrels, that are good indicators because they represent a massive part of their diet. A lot of truffles are described by small mammal poop. They will look at them under a microscope and find the spores of a variety of different truffles in the ecosystem just from the one poop, because this animal's going around foraging all these different truffles. Boars are classic. This is what everybody knows about pigs finding the truffles. And I'll show you photos, but I'm pretty sure all mammals in any forest ecosystem where there are truffles has some relationship with the truffles, and I'm pretty convinced of this. This photo is actually from a news article from Australia. There's a researcher right now that's training bandicoots not to eat truffles on truffle plantations. Like, crazy work, but they're literally training these native animals not to eat these foreign truffles that they brought in, because they're going nuts for these European truffles are growing in Australia. So I did mention you can get truffles all year now, because the winter Paragould tuber melanosporum truffles that are one of the it's the highest value cultivated truffle right now, is now being cultivated in Chile, New Zealand, and Australia, where it was typically only cultivated in Europe. And their winter is at the opposite time of the northern hemisphere winter. So there's truffles in the summertime now that only used to be available in the wintertime. So we're learning a lot. When I was in Spain, and I was in the truffle orchards, because like the whole sex life of truffles isn't fully understood whatsoever. But when I was in Spain, they understand this concept. They call them nidos. And that means nest. But if you ask them to translate in English, they'll say Spanish wells. They say we're making Spanish wells. So I'm like, why are you saying Spanish wells? You said nidos. You said it's a nest. I don't know why they say this. But what they do, and you can go to, if you're in truffle farming regions in Spain, in the garden stores, they have truffle substrate that you can buy. And it's just like some some sterile substrate like coir, peat moss, and perlite, and things like this. And the truffle farmer will mix in their own dried powdered truffles into the substrate, and they'll dig holes next to their truffle trees, or they'll take a machine and like dig a trench next to their truffle trees and fill it with this substrate. This substrate acts as like the animal poops. This is really what's happening. Like what they're doing, they're like they figured out they can put a concentrated mass of spores next to the tree, and it makes a sexual reproduction, which typically in nature this would be reliant on truffles that got left in the soil from the previous year for asexual production, or animals pooping all around the forest that ate some truffles over here, and now they pooped over here, and now they're getting a regular, non-asexual, regular sexual reproduction. I don't know what's regular, what's not regular. So there's a mycelial parent, which is the one that's attached to the tree, like the mycelium that's on the tree, and then there's the spore parent. So the mycelial parent provides more of the actual flesh and body of the mushroom. This is the best understanding that we have of it right now, but there are two different mating types that need to combine in order for truffle production, which is very interesting since it's already there, it's already diploid on the tree roots, that it needs that reproductive stimulation every year. It's very interesting. So a lot of the truffle fruiting bodies are harvested, as I mentioned. A lot of that will get left over as spore. It's like a spore bank. And essentially these spores can last, into the next season. They're not going to be viable for years and years and years like that we know of. So there's research indicating foraging behavior, hoarding, hibernations, all recognized as factors influencing the spatial and temporal patterns of spore dispersal. So like I'm saying, these animals are eating the spores, they're taking them all these different places. I think there's a really anthropomorphic lens in the way we look at animal relationships with truffles. We really look at them like the animal's the dominant creature, the animal's the moving creature, the truffle just stays there. It's like this perspective, I think the truffle is influencing the animals a lot. I think that truffle may be influencing the hibernation, sexual patterns, hoarding, all of that. I don't think that that's just the animal making, it's both ways. And I think that it's important to look at it like this. Because the animal's walking, and the truffle has produced compounds that hijack the nervous system. Of course the animal's hungry, it's looking for food, but now it's infatuated. It's locked in on this truffle. It's like it smelled the pie in the window in the cartoons. It just lift it up. It's gonna go to that truffle. It's gonna eat the truffle. It's gonna do the truffle's bidding. So evolutionary experiments, and this is what I was saying. This is why I think all mammals in any ecosystem that has truffles, which is every ecosystem, has an association with truffles. Because at some point in time, all mammals were smaller than a cat, and anything larger than a cat was a reptile. that already took every ecological function. That's why no mammals were getting larger than a cat. So after the KPG extinction event, large rocks smash the Yucatan Peninsula, all the big reptiles go away. And what we see, I know some of y'all are mushroom foragers. You've foraged mushrooms that grows on the bottom of trees, mycorrhizal and saprophytic. The tree dies. The next year, boom, massive amount of mushrooms. Maybe for the next 2 years. And then it's gone. So there's a point in time after the KPG extinction event where there's no light, all the trees are smashed up, destroyed, and all of the mammals that are left are mammals that are used to eating detritus, rock vegetables, tubers, things like this. And anything that evolved into a larger mammal started as something smaller. So I'm thinking that most mammals have some sort of relationship. Like, we're talking about relationships that are before we are what we are. Like, these are relationships of smells that was important to us before we were even primates. You know what I'm saying? So this is very deep. And this is what actually really sparked my entire journey down the truffle rabbit hole. So I was already selling truffles, I'm interested in truffles. I'm at Telluride 2017. Dr. Michelle Ross is talking about cannabis, and then she shows this on her screen. It says, truffles contain endocannabinoid metabolic enzymes in anandamide, literally the bliss molecule. Question?
I have a friend who cannot eat edibles because his body has a hard time processing it, like it's lacking the enzyme. Does this potentially benefit his ability to consume that medicine?
That would be really interesting to research. I couldn't say anything definitively on that. But what this does mean is that they're producing a compound that they have no business consuming themselves. They don't have an endocannabinoid system, but they're making an endocannabinoid. So it's suggested in this research paper that the endocannabinoid, or the ECS metabolic enzymes, and anandamide may be an ancient attractant to truffle eaters. That sparked this whole theory. I'm like, there's not enough evidence, there's not enough research, but to me, in my head, automatically I said Stone Age theory. What are we talking about? You know, Paul said it. We're part of the super taxon of histicons, which Animalia branches off of the kingdom fungi. I think ever since we branched off the kingdom fungi, it's been soliciting us to be more like fungi in the sense of what part of our body looks like mycelium. Anybody?
Veins.
Brains, nervous system. When we interact with anandamide, it induces adult neurogenesis. When we interact with other cannabinoids, it introduces adult neurogenesis. When we interact with psilocybin, adult neurogenesis. When we interact with orishinones, coralosins, adult neurogenesis. I think the mycelium is trying to make our nervous system look more like it because that gives us more complexity and ability to interact with the environment. So I think this has been going on before, like the whole time. So I was like, all right, truffle bowl theory. You know, Stone Age this is before Stone Age. You know, so the CB1 receptors evolved, and their purpose is really for neural branching, in my mind, because cells before the endocannabinoid system, before CB1 receptors, had no way of communicating inflammation to other cells connected to them. So they're getting inflamed for some reason. They can't tell the other cells around them, we're getting inflamed, better protect yourself. So the CB1 receptor allows for a downregulated glutamate response, which allows these other cells to react to inflammation, which allows for cellular branching, which wasn't happening before, because brains run hot. Our brains use like 20% of our energy, of our metabolic energy. So it gets hot like a computer gets hot. And if we're not able to control these inflammation responses, we're not getting complex. That's why I personally think that cannabis prohibition is a prohibition of human evolution, or of evolution in general. But yeah, so as I mentioned, Tuberaceae diversified around 156 million years ago. Now we have all these different types of truffles that are even beyond Tuberaceae. We have a really cool, interesting genus of truffles. But where I wanted to take this and kind of wrap my theory, we're doing a good time, is 225 million years ago, Pangea began to split, and the mammalian evolution really happened on the southern part, where we still have the last known relatives of truffles. So I'm keying a couple things here that needs more research. This is the biggest grasp at straws in this whole theory at this moment. I believe that the truffles highly influence mammalian diversification because the mammals diversified 100 million years ago, 56 million years after the truffle diversification, at a time when they would have been heavily influenced by truffles as a food because they were that small. So I'm suggesting that truffles diversified small mammal brains and are continuing to do this to this day, and that we should look at them specifically for their interactions with the nervous system. When I was very young, I really valued this guy's content online, David Wolf, and he said things that I grew up in a Catholic church, so a lot of things that I would hear about people talking to plants and things like this, and my grandfather was an English professor, so one of the first African American English professor in New York City, Medgar Evers University, Frank Brown. But he taught me in a way that my brain was very colonized. So when people tell me they're talking to plants, I'm like, in English? You know, what syntax are we using here? You know? So I'm just like, I didn't understand it. And where was I getting? I was getting somewhere here.
The artist guy you like that was influential.
The artist guy that I liked that was influential. Oh, David Wolf, yes. Yeah, so David Wolf told me, he said at this talk I went to at the Hall of Sacred Mirrors, the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors in New York. I went to this talk, and he said, the most spiritual elements of nature are levitating. They're levitational. And I didn't understand what he was saying, because he kept saying that trees are levitational. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, they're going up, they're going against gravity, they have levitational properties. And I'm just like, this doesn't make sense to me. But then what he also said is that, he's like, aroma is levitating. And I was like, I didn't understand it until years later. I was like, what? I literally opened my jar of herb, and I smell it, and the smell's going away. It's literally trying to fly away. He's like, all the spiritual elements are floating away. He said that's why when Native Americans pray, they burn the smoke to put the prayers up. And I was just like, holy crap. Like, I started to think about it more and more. And with cannabis, we really value the aromatics. We really value the stuff that can leave it. And it helps to modulate the experience a lot. So I'm just like, whoa, like with lion's mane, the aerations and reishi notes are aromatic. I'm like, what? There's this natural patterns. And I'm just like, okay, now we're dealing with the most stinkiest, loudest mushrooms in the whole game. And there's no research on this as a medicinal. What are we doing? What are we doing? So, anthropological history. How long have humans been eating these things? Well, if you look at anything that says first hominids, they ate tubers. All the text says first hominids ate insects and tubers. What's a tuber? You know what I'm saying? You're digging around in the ground, you're gonna find roots and bulbs, you're gonna find tubers, you're gonna find truffles. So some of the most historical context of truffles comes from the Middle East and Northern Africa with these truffles we call Perfecti, desert truffles, in association with different rock roses, little flowering plants, not like big trees. So my mentor in Spain said, some truffles you eat like a mushroom and some truffles you use like a seasoning. My mentor, Charles, said, this truffle, desert truffles, is the mix between vegetable, meat, and mushroom. He's like, it's the craziest mix of all those things, and they use them a lot in cooking, eat the whole thing. And medicinally, actually, they will squeeze this into their eyeballs if they have an eye infection. They'll squeeze the water out of this in their eyes. I believe, and other truffle nerds believe, that this may be the manna from heaven that is written about in Exodus, because the region that the Israelites would have traveled through is abundant in these truffles, you know, that needs the morning dew to even produce, and they talk about it all in the stories, you know. Maybe it might be manna from heaven. So the Romans are really the ones that popularize truffles into Latin-based culture, and I'm sure they got a lot of information from Northern Africa and in the Middle East. I actually saw this thing, a video like today, I think, of this woman that was like in a museum, and she's like, how come in all the museums, Egypt is separate from the rest of Africa? The Egypt section is always separate from the rest of Africa. And she said the Europeans just couldn't believe that the Africans made Egypt. And I'm just like, that's just crazy. But I'm pretty sure that the information of truffles was, they learned math, we still use Arabic numerals, all this kind of stuff. A lot of information that created Rome was solicited from Northern Africa and the Middle East. So from there, the rest of the story is all around pigs. And this is why people associate truffles with pigs, because the Romans are farming pigs, and they're farming pigs around manicured forest, maintained forest, because up until the Industrial Revolution, we needed the forest way more. And this is also the issue with matsutake in Japan. After industrialization, after the World Wars, the matsutake production went down. There was a scientist in Iwaizumi that was solicited, a mycologist was solicited to increase truffle production in Iwaizumi, Japan. And what he did was he realized that after the townspeople stopped depending on the forest for coal to power the towns, they let the broadleaf trees dominate over the pine trees because they were cutting the broadleaf trees to make their coal, their charcoal. And when the forests were needed, there was a different ecology where pine trees were more abundant and there wasn't a bunch of leaves on the ground of the forest because those trees weren't dropping leaves on the forest. So the matsutake needed a more bare soil and it needed pine-dominated forest. Same with truffles in Europe. Truffle production has historically gone down to the point where there's wild truffles are almost extinct for black truffles in certain regions of Spain, Italy, France, because nobody's maintaining the forests anymore. They're just letting it be a wild environment. So this is where the story begins, really. And so cultivation, the first documented cultivation is the beginning of the 19th century in France. Joseph Talon was planting acorns around trees that he knew had truffles on them already, and then transplanting those acorns into his farmland with success of those trees then producing the truffles. So they're like, okay, we're figuring it out. This is very similar to how mushrooms were starting to be cultivated in Japan, where people put their firewood next to the firewood of the same tree type next to mushroom logs that already had mushrooms growing on them of that tree. Same kind of like concept of natural mimicry, biomimicry. So started planting the acorns under there and get that fungus on them, and a lot of this is going to be like a big clonal farm of one type of truffle, but that's where we started. So now farmers are inoculating seedlings in laboratory environments with truffles. In order to do this, you need a bunch of truffles. You need to buy a bunch of truffles. You have to identify the truffles. This is the biggest issue in the US right now, is that people are so excited about doing this and there's not enough analytical laboratories to analyze these. This is how we have weed truffles in North America already. But also, why the heck are we growing European truffles in North America before we even discovered the delicious American truffles? What are we doing? I don't know. Because now people think that some of the weed truffles that come up on the farm is native truffles that we didn't even describe yet, that are also delicious and edible because we created an environment for truffles to grow. So I don't want to get too far detached, but if you buy a pound of truffles, it's only illegal, I believe, in Italy to import Chinese truffles, because people are importing Chinese truffles into various countries in Europe and cutting European truffles with the Chinese truffles that looks like the European truffles. So they call them tuber indicum, which is a large complex of species of melanistic truffles, black truffles that look very similar to the Perigord truffle. They're black on the outside, black on the inside. So people will buy them and then put enough Perigord truffles that smells, because the tuber indicum doesn't have a very intense aroma. So they'll put enough truffles that smells, and then they'll fill up the rest with tuber indicum because it's cheaper, way cheaper. And then they send those out. So if you use those to inoculate your farm, then you just inoculated your farm with Chinese truffles and European truffles, you just wasted so much years of your life, tens of thousands of dollars potentially, and a lot of farmers did this already in the US. And tuber brumale, because people didn't know how to identify this. Tuber brumale is straight up just an undesirable truffle from Europe that is already wild in North America, in our soils, in our environment, because people didn't know any better when they brought these truffles in. So a lot's going on, but what it looks like is baby tree, no mycorrhizal association. You want to introduce the truffle first because there's more desirable associates in the environment. And then you want to plant it somewhere that's not mycorrhizally dominant. You want to plant it somewhere that's endomycorrhizally dominant or bustular mycorrhizally dominant. A field, an old farm, somewhere with grass, no trees. You don't want to plant them somewhere already with trees. There's competition. So really, this represents a great way to restore old farmland that's been monocropped for a great period of time. So tuber melanosporum, this has the most information on cultivation. This is the Perigord truffle, this is the winter truffle. This one's black on the inside, very gassy, very leather, cognac, rich aromas. This is one of the ones I learned about cultivating in Spain. Spain is producing 80% of the truffles of the world right now, of tuber melanosporum. France is buying these, Italy's buying these, and reselling them as Italian or French truffles because Spain is producing them more, and the environments are not as ideal everywhere for this. Where I went to cultivate, learn about cultivation, if you spill your lemonade, you spill a little kombucha on the ground, it's going to make so many bubbles and fizz because the ground is alkaline. The ground is very alkaline. It's less than 1% organic matter. I don't know if anybody saw in the video at the beginning, I'm like literally on rocks pulling the truffle out of the ground. The Romans did a number on that land. And you can see the old Roman aqueducts. People farmed that shit to nothing. Farmed all the organic matter out. And now the land is destitute, and truffles represent a revitalization of the economy in those regions where there's literally abandoned villages and castles, and you can see old empires, and there's no money because there's nothing in the land anymore. It's all washed away. But now this is revitalization. People are like, literally, this represents a revitalization of where we live. This is what's doing it for us. Look at these rocks. I'm pulling truffles out of rocks, and the truffles are able to get nutrients out of this 1% organic matter and feed these trees. The only other thing that's being farmed in this area is olives, and very few and far between. You'll drive down the highway and see hectares and hectares and hectares of, or acres of truffle farms. That's it. That's all that's out there, and then abandoned castles and abandoned villages. Drive through a village and there's 2 people living in a whole village. Crazy. Central Spain is abandoned. Everybody lives on the coast. This is drone footage I took of truffle plantation outside Teruel, Spain. And so I show this video to people and they say, oh, monocrop agriculture. And I say, this place would be a desert if this wasn't even here. This is making leaves that can go on the ground. And the most productive truffle farm that I saw, I mentioned the gentleman, I'm not allowed to say his name. I can't show his face in my documentary, but I got video of his production. He had the only polyculture, the only truffle farm that had other things growing, and it was the most productive truffle farm that my teacher, Luz Cocina, has studied. And she studies all the truffle plantations. She said this one's the most productive. We're learning so much from this one, because this man, when he was 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, his family was destitute. His dad put him in the mountains with a dog and said, I'll see you in a week. Take his truffles. Okay, I'll see you in another week. No, nothing. Out in the forest with a dog, fighting wild boars and stuff. This man knows truffles. I went to go pick a truffle from the dog. He said, it's going to be right there. It's going to weigh this much. I dig it up, and we weigh it. I'm just like, are you kidding me? This man is like so dialed in with the environment. He's like, saw the wild trees while they were still there. He knows what the environment looked like. He was the only person able to replicate this. And it's incredible. This is where we want to go with this. We want to be able to make our truffle orchards that look actually like a wild forest. So I'm gonna go, still not good on time, shoot. We want to design these truffle, climate positive truffle systems. This is where we want to go because right now, this is very new. Regenerative agriculture in the truffle space, there's only a few people talking about this because truffle cultivation right now is not regenerative agriculture. They're tearing up the land, they're beating up the soil. It is monocrop agriculture, and we need to take it into a different direction because it can go in a different direction. direction. I think that needs more permaculture people here, because we're all figuring this out together, and most of the people that are attacking this are taking it from the lens of traditional crop production. Like I saw people making the Spanish wells, like with this thing looks like a chainsaw that goes across the side of these trees and just like rips up the soil and stuff. I'm like, there's gotta be better ways to do this, you know? So a lot of these truffles can associate with a variety of trees. So you also have that ability to choose trees that's gonna be better for where you live, that produces a nut that's valuable. Also, a lot of people don't wanna interfere with their truffle orchards and things like this, but like, so they don't even harvest the acorns. But I'm just like, yo, you guys have so much production of other valuable crops. Like, people in the US are eating acorn flour. I'm like, do you guys even know this? You know? But then, I mean, the truffles are so valuable, it's like, yeah, leave the acorns, what are you talking about? I don't know why this text is so small. I'm just, if anybody wants to take a picture of this, feel free. But this is just further emphasizing what I mentioned earlier, that truffles can represent a really massive amount of carbon storage in the soil. So tuberostivum, this is also cultivated. There was actually a couple from Poland that came to the international course that I was taking, and then specifically wanted to learn about how to grow this in Poland. They're growing more of these, and now we can take advantage of understanding these grow well in this climate. So, you know, I might as well just grow this one here, because everybody was so infatuated with growing the most expensive one. Meanwhile, they live in a country that doesn't have any of this culture at all. If you have any kind of truffle, people is going to be happy with it. Like, in Europe, they already are like, this one's the best, we don't even want this one. But the other one that they don't want is still amazing. And I'm just like, what are we doing? You know? It's very, you know, bourgeoisie. A lot of this culture was designed in bourgeoisie culture where people were like, we're better than you. We're doing this because we're better than you. Like, that's how this culture emerged. So we have to like understand that in certain aspects of this. This is Burwell Farms. This is in South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. The agriculture engineer behind this is an African man that figured out how to do this process in his dreams. In his interviews, he says, I figured out how to cultivate tuber porky in my dreams. And they grow them on loblolly pine, but they also have associations with deciduous trees. So they can be cultivated on pine or broadleaf tree. And this one is not valued in Europe. Certain gourmets and gourmands will value this. Certain truffle foragers usually are the ones that are consuming these because they're not able to sell them as well. Because everybody wants the magnatum, the big, expensive white, the crazy white one, the one that sells in the auctions to the princes and the sheiks and all the richest people in the world, you know. This one, people are like, oh, this is the lesser white. This one, nobody has this in the US except for them. This one is valuable. It smells very gassy. It smells like cologne that my dad used to wear. Puerto Rican dude just doused himself in cologne in the 90s. It smells like some cologne my dad used to wear. Tuber magnatum also smells like cologne. Very, very gassy. This is the only time I ever interacted with it. I only seen it, only ate it one time. Super expensive. I have no business selling these. Nobody I know is going to spend this much money on a truffle. Most people I know don't know enough about truffles anyways to be spending this kind of money on truffles. They could be thousands of dollars, $2,000 plus per pound for these things, and they could sell on auctions for 5 figures, a lot of money. Because usually every year somebody finds one that's like the size of a coconut or something, and then it just sells on auctions and gets flown to wherever part of the world. So here we have Matrillomyces turfezoides. This one is the honey truffle. It grows on the Danube River in Hungary, and it grows on North American locust trees on the side of this river in Europe. So I'm just like, are we exploring this? Are we exploring these trees here in the US? Who is looking at these trees in the US? Because maybe we got them. And this one has research on a specific protein that is very bioavailable, digestible, and our tongue recognizes it as incredibly sweet at a low amount. This is incredible. This is incredible, and because we haven't figured out cultivation of this truffle, it grows in a very sandy soil with these locust trees. Scientists have figured out which genes are responsible for producing this sugar protein, and they've introduced it to a yeast, and getting this yeast to produce it because this has incredible commercial value in the food production system. So very, very interesting. This truffle is sweet. It's cloyingly sweet. You can use this to sweeten This is a dessert truffle. There are other dessert truffles that are sweet and smell like fruit. There's a broad range of a lexicon of truffle flavors and smells outside of the classical truffles. Leucangium carthusianum, this is your Oregon black. It smells like cherries, it smells like bananas. I met Charles Ruff. He says, if you find a big Oregon truffle and it's white on the inside, they call those bananas. They smell like bananas, and these are one of the only truffles that can ripen outside of the ground. So most truffles, you have to pick them right. They won't ripen ever. This truffle actually can age, and there's other truffles that we're finding now that has a longer shelf life than what we know traditionally. But this is a dessert truffle, and you recognize them for their gas potentials. So one of the things that I didn't mention is a lot of these truffles grow in cold places and are in season in cold places in times where the ground might even freeze or have snow on it. So what does this mean scientifically? Let's put our Jimmy Neutron brain on real quick. Think, you know what I'm saying? If it's cold, it's wet, and they need to be smelled. It can't be fat soluble, and it can't be water soluble. Because if it's raining on it, then the smell's gonna go away. And it has to be volatile at a very low temperature because the animal needs to smell it through the snow potentially. So they're creating this incredible complex range of aromatics, not just them, but their microbiome. There's organisms on them and in them. They let certain organisms come into their peridium. In the gleba, there's we'll look at some truffles too, but in the gleba there's the white parts that goes around the colored parts inside the truffle. The white parts are veins because the truffles poop and pee. They put exudates out of those white parts, but they'll also accept organisms into their inside from in those little holes in the gleba. So there's organisms on them, in them, that are consuming compounds that they're creating and actively creating more compounds. They're an active chemical house. They're a chemical powerhouse. This is one of the reasons why we have to carefully take care of them whenever we harvest them. You gotta keep them like they're living in the soil. You gotta keep the wet paper towel. You gotta open it. You gotta get the gas in. You can't have them in the can for too long. It can't be too wet. It can't be too dry. Otherwise the smell goes away because they're still actively producing those smells. So this is my first time finding truffles. I was out near Bellingham. I was out with my friend Sunny, her dog Stella, finding the Leucangium and also some tuber organense and tuber gibosum. So although they are called Oregon whites and Oregon blacks and Oregon browns, they are not biased of colonial borders, and they grow from Northern California all the way through Canada into Alaska. So they're just described by people in Oregon. That's why they're called Oregon blacks, Oregon whites. They don't care about that and nothing about that. But organense and gibosum grow at different times of year and oftentimes are called the same thing. They're both called Oregon white truffles, so it's a little bit confusing. But some grow in the spring, some grow in the summer, and some truffles ripen at different times of years and are valuable at different times of years, which I'll talk about with another species here. Oh, here, I didn't even mention it. So a tuber estivum, if you ever see tuber uncinnatum, it's the same species. Tuber uncinnatum is pulled in the winter time, and tuber estivum is pulled in the summertime. It's the same species. Nobody knows why sometimes they ripen in the summer, sometimes they ripen in the winter, but they call them different things, but it's the same species. So some truffles just stay in the ground for a long time and smell different at different points in time. We're learning a lot. Tuber leonii, most complicated truffle right now, has distribution from North America, or Canada, to Brazil. The type species was described in a way that this complex is all being called tuber leonii, where it should be multiple different species. So there has to be some work done with the type specimen so that this can be broken up, because right now there's tuber leonii 1, 2, 3, XYZ, all these different representations of tuber leonii, different DNA, but all called tuber leonii complex whatever. They're growing with filbert trees for the most part, so like hickory, and pecan. This is where they're described. This is why they may be called the pecan truffle. There is a lot of variation in truffles in the American Southeast. Actually, right now, Maker's Mark has a a truffle orchard of a specific, I think it's called the Kentucky truffle, that they're cultivating, and they have a whiskey that has a fuse of a native truffle of the southeast. Imea gigantea. This one is known as the Blue Ridge truffle. This one is it has a distribution of an Appalachian range, and this one is like cheese. This one smells like cheese, like really like alliums in cheese, like oniony, cheesy kind of smell. I've only interacted with this one time, and as far as I know, there's only one company that's distributing this that you could buy it from, and then otherwise it was a very, very secretive thing. I used to live in Asheville, North Carolina. That's where I established my first cordyceps farm. Was in Weaverville, North Carolina, and I would hear about this. There's this really famous forager. I can't remember what his name is right now, but he's the one that spilled the beans about this into like the New York Post. But everybody said, oh, he's finding truffles. Well, not everybody. People in the club, I was in the mushroom club and stuff, like, there's a guy who's finding truffles. This guy, he finds truffles. He takes everybody out every now and then. He takes some people out, find truffles. And it was just very secret. It was very hush-hush. But then he comes out to the New York Post. He says, I think that if people don't know that they should care about the environment, then this is going to go away. So he tells the whole world that we have these truffles here in North Carolina. Plus, we have this one of the sickest food scenes in the East Coast. If you've never been to Asheville, go to Asheville. Asheville is like a bastion of sanity and safety in the Bible Belt. And I'm not trying to be rude, but I got spanked by the Bible Belt. So I can say what I gotta say. I got some little skinhead, three cops come out on my little boy. You know what I'm saying? They don't treat you real nice if you feel free down there. That's all I can say. Imea gigantea, very valuable in the South, very valuable in North Carolina. Asheville is the culture of these two specifically. If you want to go where chefs know how to use these, Asheville, North Carolina, Weaverville, North Carolina, Boone, North Carolina. These Appalachian Truffles is a company. Appalachian Truffles was coined by this company. This is Tuber cannuliculatum. This is the Appalachian truffle, not to be confused with the Blue Ridge truffle. They have the same distribution. Some people like to call this the Michigan truffle because it's not specifically an Appalachian range. It actually grows up in Michigan. It grows up in Canada. It grows through the Midwest. It grows in Ohio. These are being cultivated in Maryland and in Quebec. So that's a big. Those are faraway places. This one I think has a lot of. Already we have standards of practice of cultivating this. It's very exciting to me. Very exciting. And I didn't mention. You guys are getting the grand deluxe because I have more time. I usually have to do this in an hour. All the people that are trying to cultivate the European varieties here in North America are bringing in truckloads of lime to put on their property to change the pH of acres. And they have to bring in all this lime to maintain the pH to grow these truffles. Meanwhile, there are native, valuable varieties growing in the native soil. Okay, I think I got nods, so I think people understand why I'm saying it like this, because it's bonkers to me. It's bonkers. This is rare, Calicuia brunea. My buddy Dustin and I ate this one. It was kind of cheesy, really oniony also. This one, I was with Charles Lefevre, who's like one of the more prominent names in the truffle space in the Pacific Northwest. He said, this is so rare that we go years without finding it. This is the Oregon brown truffle, and we found it, PBS came to film us. We found it in an afternoon, we popped in one spot and boom, it was there. I was like, oh, great, that's crazy. But we were in the type location for it. We were legit in the spot where it was described. Yeah, crazy, super rare, super stanky. I don't really know what the potential of this is. It grows on Doug fir, so I'm pretty sure all of these truffles I mentioned that grows in the Northeast or Pacific Northwest grows on Doug fir. They grow in the plantations from the logging plantations, and it's like as soon as their trees hit a specific year, y'all got all the way until they get logged to keep harvesting truffles from them.
Does that smell like a black or a white?
That doesn't smell like a black or a white. That smells like way more like I find the white smells like solventy, gassy, petroleum kind of smells, and the black smells fruity. That one smells like onions and cheesy and like.
That thing stayed alive in my fridge forever. It smelled like my whole kitchen smelled like that for months.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Crazy.
And that's the thing too. So the European varieties are like, you gotta eat this thing in like 4 days, 5 days, you got a week tops, 10 days tops, right? Some of these varieties, like Canuliculatum, can stay in your fridge for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and still be usable. The black truffle, the Lactantium carthusianum, you can just keep using that thing until it stinks. Like if it starts to stink, like that's not desirable, then it's bad. But it changes, the aroma changes. So this is described as of last year out of Kentucky, Tuber cumberlandense and Tuber canurevelatum. So 2 new edible species from the Northeast. Come on now. I'm literally, my kids are born in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania. Cumberlandense, come on now. That's awesome. And they're growing native, so for me, I'm just like, I want to tell as many young people as I can, although there aren't techniques and there isn't a description and there isn't a guide on how to do this, you can be the one that describes this. You can be the one that pioneers this. We can create a truffle culture, an agrarian truffle culture, a foraging truffle culture together. These were just described. Do you know how many kids are hanging out at their parents' house with a dog that doesn't know what to do with their life, that doesn't want to work in society? Tell them they can go forage in the woods with their dog. $2,000 a day, $4,000 a day. These aren't even on the market. You can name your price. Oh, come on now. Like, this is so serious to me. This is so serious to me. My cousin lost her son to suicide. Why? I see so many young people that's looking at this world and they're like, damn, y'all are giving us this world? Everybody's telling me the world's gonna be messed up when I'm older. No, we gotta make these connections. We have to make these connections. It's so important. It can mean everything. It can mean everything. This can change lives. This is economy. This makes people care about the environment. It's so many things here that I'm trying to express, and I'm happy that you guys gave me the time to express it, because it's so important. And this is why I'm trying to make this documentary, and I'm trying to make it really, really cool, because I need young people to be able to relate to this, because somebody needs to be able to connect with them that can connect to the environment and make it relatable, because it's like, what do you care about the environment? Why? You know, as a black person, everybody says, oh, we don't have to do that anymore. Go away. Everybody says, we don't do that. We don't do farming. We don't have to do that anymore. We got bad taste in our mouth about it. How do you make this relatable? You know, you gotta make it cool. That's why I got seduced by in New York, I'm in a Michelin star restaurant. I'm selling this cool truffles. For me, I was seduced by rap culture. I want the fast cars, the cool clothes, the expensive things. That's nice. That's what most people think is successful. People don't even know how to read books. People get out of high school, they don't know how to read, they don't know English. They know that a fast car goes fast. They know, oh, Gucci, that person is successful. That's what things are to most people that's in the cities. They don't even know how to relate to this, you know? So I'm just like, how do we make this relatable? That's where it matters. Everybody else is already saved. I don't know if somebody has some question. Yep. Yep, I got you. But before I do that, I wanted to show you guys this. We gotta make it more relatable. This Nike swoosh is Felinus leather. There's coconut leather, there's a recycled military blanket, pineapple leather. But yeah, how do we make it relatable? You gotta make it relatable in a way that just is like, I care about nature. Like, I don't know how many people I showed this, and they're just like, oh my God, like, I want this, I need to have this. You know what I mean? And they didn't care about anything about nature. And Mycofest, we do a really good job of this with the music and all this kind of interaction. So, all right, so I don't have this specifically. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I don't need a round of applause, so I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, this is my life work, so that means a lot to me. I try not to get too emotional about it, but like, I really get emotional about my work. But, so in truffle farms, you'll see a brulee, is what they call it. It means burn. Brulee means burn. They call it a brulee. Around a truffle tree will be a circle where there's no plants. Like, there'll maybe little weeds and things like this, but then there's a circle around the tree, there's no plants, there's nothing. It's just a circle that's empty. And the truffles made this. Other mycorrhizal fungus does this. And I didn't know what it was. I saw it in the forest because I spent a lot of time. I spent the majority of the past 15 years of my life in the forest. And I've seen trees that has a circle around it, and I didn't know why. And certain mycorrhizal species will make a sterile burn site to produce their fruiting bodies in around the tree. So if you see a tree that has a circle around it, automatically that might be a sign of a truffle. If the truffles are in season, you may see squirrel holes, you may see an animal hole that you can dig in the hole. Squirrels don't eat the whole truffles generally, so you can dig in their holes and find the truffles, the rest of the truffles. Larry Evans taught me about this. He literally showed me truffles in Telluride that he found by digging in squirrel holes that were edible, but they stink really bad. He thought they were amazing, but I didn't. I was younger, I was still developing my palate. It took me a while to like tomatoes and stuff like this. But he showed me this, I was like, this is disgusting. But he was like, this is amazing, I'm gonna eat this, it's gonna be so good. He's like, I found it in a squirrel hole. And y'all, I don't know who knows Larry Evans, the dude with the ponytails, and he'd be naked in the bathtub filled with morels, he's a character.
Barefooted.
He's awesome, he's a great guy. You can use the animals, the squirrel holes, if you practice a sit spot in the environment, you just go find a spot in nature, sit there as long as you can for as many days as you can, and the animals will start to recognize you and they will go walk in front of you and do stuff. You can start to just watch the environment. Then you can start to see where the animals find truffles, because deers eat truffles, bears eat truffles, all the animals I showed you, they eat truffles. Also, truffles will usually produce a lump in the ground, there'll be a lump in the dirt. That's a truffle underneath there. And then when they're ripe, flies will be flying around one spot underneath the tree. So that's other ways to find them. So if you can track animals, if you can find the subtle nuances to track an animal in an environment, you can use those same kind of skills to say, oh, there's a brulee, there's a lump, there's maybe some hole scratching, there's some flies. And there's some people, there's a guy in Ohio that's finding truffles off his own nose. There's a woman I met in New Mexico that finds truffles without a dog. The first time I went to the New Mexico Mycological Society, this woman brought 2 different truffles that she found outside of snow melting on the side of a mountain outside Albuquerque. So there's ways, this is new. This is as much as I know about how to find them without an animal. But if you train a dog to find any truffle, they can find all different types of truffles. And they'll also find other ascomycetes, cup fungus, and things like this. You can train dogs to find matsutake, morels, whatever, chanterelles.
How deep are they usually?
All the species are different. So the ones in Oregon can be deeper. The ones in Spain, they're generally a really close, a couple inches in the ground. I've seen sometimes in Oregon the dog is just digging and digging and digging, and they find it so you got to dig down a little bit. But varying depths depending. I've seen videos of the Chinese truffle harvest where they're in this forest and they're literally just ripping the duff down, feet down, and there's just truffles just in layers of this organic mass of duff. So different by species. So this is another new species from 2021, Tuber eburnum and Tuber majusii is what I would call this one. Is a pine-associated truffles from the northeast or from the eastern North America, described by Benjamin Lamont, who's actually a really prominent researcher in the truffle space. So these are 4 commercially valuable truffles. They've described in the past 4 or 5 years that has you can't even buy these. But they're out there, and there's no culture representing them. So when we're finding all these things, what do you gotta do? You gotta find a community lab, you find some truffles, because now I'm seeing people on Facebook says, hey, I found this, what is this? I found this in my yard, I found this on my farm, I found this while I was foraging, my dog found this thing. What is this thing? All these people are posting this. Find a local laboratory can do PCR. You know what I mean? What does it stand for? Pipette, cry, repeat. But it's a way of amplifying DNA. So you can take your little bit of DNA, amplify it, figure out what it is, send it to another laboratory that can tell you what the DNA is. It'll sequence it for you. You put it in the GenBank. GenBank says, survey says, tuber canuliculata. It'll give you the most closest representation of that DNA. It'll say 98 point wherever percent, 99%. If it says less than 97%, it's probably different. You maybe got something new, but if it's 97, 96, whatever percent, it's probably related enough to that species that you can start to describe it close to that species. So what's this stuff? This is microfluidics. This is a lab on a chip. You don't have to learn molecular biology anymore. You can literally computer program a microfluidics electric plate to do all of the DNA stuff that you need to do, and then you just put it into a machine that tells you what all the sequence is. Between this and AI, you don't have to know science to do science whatsoever, and you can produce a lot of really incredible So I have a couple of these. These are DNA sequencers. I have a couple prideful things that I've done in the mycological space, but don't at me. I was the first person that was telling people to use these things to sequence mushrooms, and people were laughing at me, telling me it was a waste of my time. And then a research paper came out a year and a half after I was telling people about this that says, Min-ion, DNA barcodes for everyone, by everyone, that says, this $600 chip, you can get thousands of DNA barcodes off of it. It effectively reduced the price of DNA barcoding from $15 a sample to less than 15 cents. Now everybody uses these things, and people laughed at me. The same people laughed at me use them now. Consumption. And this is crazy, honestly. I just got to go just one little dive deeper just for one time for myself. Like, during the pandemic, I used the stimulus checks to teach myself how to do molecular biology because I knew I needed to do research that nobody was doing and that I couldn't find anybody to help me with. So I took the stimulus checks, I bought DNA sequencers, PCR, and I taught myself how to do it because I didn't have anywhere to go, and I couldn't go anywhere, and all I could do was look at stuff on the internet. So I taught myself how to do this off YouTube, and then the Environmental Biology and Plant Pathology Department of Penn State hired me to teach the graduate students and faculty about how I taught myself how to do this. Thank you. I told him I got high on LSD. Consumption, gas. All right, this is where I'm going to end it. I'm going to get into questions, and then I'm going to make a couple little mixed drinks. We're going to, to try a little truffle extract I got. I figured out a really great process, which I'll get into a little bit because all these truffle products are synthetic. That's where I'm going to end this. All the shelf-stable truffle products, almost all of them are synthetic. So how do we eat these things? How do we consume these things? We want to capture the gas. The gas is fat soluble. We want to capture it in fat while we have it. So we can keep it in closed containers, closed quarters with fat, butter, chocolate, nuts. These can actually infuse through Tetra Paks. So if you have milk, cream, you can infuse the truffles through the Tetra Pak, and this increases the sterility of the end infused product. Like you can infuse a product that's never been exposed to the environment still in a sterile pack. The nuts, crazy. I had a truffle granola at the Oregon Truffle Festival last year. It was still one of the loudest truffle infused products I ever had. And there's people that will argue. It's funny, in my conversation with Eugenia Bone that I have in my documentary, she doesn't believe that there's any truffle products that can be as effective as a fresh truffle. But I think that we're still so much to explore. And I'm trying to just keep pushing that. I challenged her in it. I'm like, all right, I'll give you a truffle product that actually tastes like truffles that's not a fresh truffle. These are the ways that we're infusing cheese, They'll go through eggs, they'll go through the pores of eggs. But you have to poach the egg because you don't want to cook the smells out. So most people that think they tried a truffle product, survey says no. Truffle flavor, truffle essence, truffle extract, black truffle extract, generally is synthetic compounds that's made in a laboratory. If it's made with real truffles, it will generally say made with real truffles, made with tuber melanosporum, whole truffle, pieces. It will say things like this. If it doesn't say that, it's not real. It's synthetic. It's probably one of these compounds, one of these synthetic compounds that are, some of them are found in truffles, but the synthetic compounds that they're making aren't coming from truffles. They're not getting a bunch of truffles and extracting this. They're synthesizing it in a laboratory because they're the compounds in truffles that are the most distinct. Truffles are cocktail smells, but these are the ones that hit your nose the strongest. So you can pervert your taste buds by actually eating these fake truffle chips and truffle popcorn and all this kind of stuff. The smell's so strong, it's so intense. When you actually smell real truffle, you're like, this doesn't smell or taste like the truffle I know, because you just got full, raw chemical to your face. That stuff's crazy, especially the oils. It's super overpowering. If you ever had truffles at a restaurant, and you're like, this is way too intense, it's probably this truffle oil, and they're overdoing it because it's fake. They want to make sure that you really smell the truffle. And it's just really abusive. What the heck? Oh yeah, cool. So this is the beginning of our experimentation. This was in 2022, 2023. We started working with soxhlet extraction of dehydrated truffles. Then we started working with freeze-dried truffles. We're keep hashing away at figuring out how to stabilize the smell. Like, what is it? How do we figure this out? So little by little, we're learning more, and we're learning more. To the next one. And we started to develop this product called a NOND, which I have available here, which is a truffle extract that's made with tuber stevum and tuber melanosporum, freeze-dried and fermented lactofermentation to stabilize as much as we can. And we made this with shungite filtered spring water, Appalachian spring water from Pennsylvania, ultrasonic assisted extraction. So we're doing as much as we learn, we continue to learn how to stabilize these smells. I encourage you guys to try one of the mocktails that I'll be offering so you can see what I'm talking about. You can smell what I'm talking about. And I'll be shaving some dry-aged, koji dry-aged truffles that I have here. This is a new process that was developed by Chef Wade Fox from Tennessee on preparation of a more stable truffle product that still smells like truffles. So this is where we're getting at. I mean, I really want to push the culture, and I think there's so many different angles that we can take this. I don't know why it always does this to me. It doesn't let me go to my next slide from a video. But that's it. I'm going to be open for questions, but I'd rather take the questions over there so I can serve some drinks, or I can do it here. I can actually do the drinks over here. I don't know if the Fungi Perfecti staff has something to say, but y'all just got the full. You got that was I'm proud of you guys. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate everybody that sat through. This is a lot of
But it's only surrounded by koji. I don't want any. No.
All right, I'm here with Lonnie Jean Ronenbaum. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's with Fungi Perfecti, right? Paul Stamets Company out of Shelton, Washington. And you guys are sponsoring this thing with William Padilla Brown tonight about truffles. Are you a truffle fan?
Huge truffle fan.
Yeah?
Yes.
What's your favorite way to eat truffles?
I think I have been shown the way through Will's tasting.
Yeah.
I like the extract that he
That was
used.
so fun, honestly.
Totally.
Definitely
But thank you so much for having my back.
got a lot of skills.
Yeah, these drinks are super awesome and unique. And she gifted me this Amadou hat tonight, so thank you big time on that. I will rock this proudly. It's going like on the top of my mushroom shrine shelf.
Yeah, today's been a good day, but giving you that hat definitely made it.
Oh man, this made my day so good. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Been some bubbly.
Yeah. Toast. Toast. This one is cacao. It's unfortunately unsweetened, but this one is cacao, coconut cream, and a little bit of seltzer to like make it a less thick.
Yeah.
But I incorporated with the fat because the truffle, the dry-aged truffle and the truffle extract bonds onto the fat.
Ooh.
So instead of it just gassing away into the air, some of it's actually going to get captured into the drink.
It's really good. It's like the coconut comes through.
Yeah, I like.
How-to booklet on the mocktail.
Yeah, I'm really trying to like develop the best presentation for the truffle because it's like it's a different element. And you'll notice if you did try this cacao beverage, the truffle will be more prominent in that one than this next beverage is.
So what truffle is in here?
That is
Melanosporum?
tuber stevum, and then the extract has tuber stevum and tuber melanospora in it.
I really want to try those honey truffles or the sugar truffles. Those sound crazy.
Yeah, those are really nice. They're only available like later in the summer.
Wow.
Like late summer. Because they're only wild.
This is Anthony from Fungi Perfecti. Look at, we're like Amadou hat brother.
Twin a little bit.
That's killer. And you work at Fungi Perfecti.
Yes, sir.
Right on. So thanks for all your hard work, man.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Amadou brothers for life. Yeah.
Mycelium
know she's missing out on.
in, stem it up, put your cap on,
That was awesome.
Give thanks and praise for life.
How can people reach you?
MycoSymbiotics.com, MycoFest.net, MycoSymbio on Instagram, MycoSymbio on YouTube. Tap in, you know what I'm saying? Come see the uncensored reality. Come to MycoFest to see what we can't say on Instagram.
And you're going to be back in the Northwest in October, Peninsula, Olympic Peninsula Fungi Fest. I'll be there too, giving a talk with, and William will be there. So looking
Check me
forward
out.
to seeing you down the trail.
Might be in a city near you soon.
All right. Much love.